Yes, guys, welcome to another episode of Treatings. Straight in, I just wanted to sort of speak on or give my opinion on the Jason Arday situation, the former Cambridge professor. Next, I wanted to speak on the early release scheme that the government is proposing and that is soon to potentially go through in some way, shape, or form. Next, I want to speak about sort of migrant housing in the English countryside or market towns of Britain, that are not city centres and places that are obviously still seen as quite cultural to the country. Anyway, let's get started. Let's get into this. So, regarding the Jason Arday situation, if I were the political godfather, I would avoid speaking about this. I would never speak about it. If I was in any position of power as a black man, I would avoid speaking about this if I could get away with it, you know. But I'm not in that position, never will be, but we all fantasize. I'm just here, so I'll speak about it, right? First off, man, I feel very sorry for his family. He's got kids, wife, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So, from that perspective, I feel very, very, extremely sorry for him. And why I've reserved a little judgment up until whenever is because, sometimes unless you know someone interpersonally, you can never really judge them through media, unless they're speaking into the camera a little bit like myself or other people do. So I had to look online today to study him speaking. So I watched a interview that he carried out on Channel 4 and a couple of snippets of him speaking about himself, just to gauge him and just literally look into his soul is what I was trying to do. I was really, really studying him speak, and can I say that very articulate person. If I'm being honest, he was quite deflective when he spoke. Would you ask him a question, but then a lot of smart people are like that, but then he'll kind of answer your question but then go on to another subject and speak to you about that subject. Never came off as anybody, never looked like anyone wicked or with bad intentions. But what I'm going to really just go straight into is that, to me, there's three kind of lies, or liars or whatever, yeah? And it's funny, I see someone today that looked like someone that is like one of these liars that I used to know, right? But, you've got these people, right, that, I don't know, you be out in the pub with them or whatever, and they say, I've got to go home, and you're like, why? Oh, you know what, I've left the food on, and they haven't. Or they give you some kind of wild excuse and you're like, oh, come on, do you know, it's just to not meet you or just to go home early or not to buy drinks or whatever it is. They just give you these lies that are just outrageous. They're white lies and it's harmful. But they just can't help themselves. They just lie to your face and they can't help themselves, yeah? So you got them harmless people that lie and they're lying and they know you're lying, but you just know that's them and you just let it go over your head and whatever. Do you know what I mean? They tell you tall stories and you still like them. So you've got those type of liars, right? Then you've got the second type of lie, I would say, where you say something. We've all done it to a degree, yeah. Where you say something and then person captures what you've said and then it escalates, so you got to start making a lie about another lie about another lie and create a story for a story for a story for a story just off of that one thing that you've said, and it's escalated and it's now snowballed and it's bigger than what it needed to be, and you wish you just never said you were this or you were that, you know. And then there's the third type of lie or liars, right, where it's malicious, it can have dangerous consequences, it can lead to severe consequences for whoever they've involved in a lie, or can create real catastrophe in people's lives and whatever field it's within, you know. So you've got different types of liars, and at this juncture you can't really establish, and it doesn't really matter now, but you can't establish what kind of liar he may have been. He may have been someone that, you know, he said something and he's gone, let me run with it, and it's escalated and it's got out of hand, and then no one's checked him on saying certain things and it's escalated and snowballed, but he's really a good person at heart. Then you've got these other people, like I say, man, they say things and it's like devious. Do you know what I mean? And I can't really pick up on which one it was with him. And I wouldn't really say either if I'm really being honest with it. But that's all I'm saying is, like, you've got different types of people. But, you know, given the benefit of the doubt, I don't think he was like a malicious, he wasn't coming off like a malicious person. Just came off as someone that, you know, he ran with it. You know, he ran with it. They weren't going to check what he was saying. And it just escalated and it got out of control, and no one controlled what he was saying anything back. And he was able to sort of go quite far with it, you know. But, that's all I got to say, really. That's all I got to say on it. Like, you know, very, very sad. I'm hoping he wasn't, and I don't think he was. Like, he did it with maliciousness. Just like you say one thing, it embellishes itself by you saying more and more and more and more and more. No one's checking what you're saying, and it just builds and builds and builds, you know. However, like, he seemed intellectual enough to know at some stage it was going to catch up with him, you know, or he was going to be questioned on some of the things that he was saying, you know, that he'd done and completed, you know. So, with that being said, had he already contemplated, if I get caught with all of this, then I'm going to do what I did, you know. Like, I know, like, they'll say at the moment, like, he was herded into it and all the rest of it. But sometimes, man, we've all spoke to people, you know, some people say, well, if the wife and the kids leave me, I'm going to do something to myself. If I lose my job, I'm going to do something to myself. If this happens, something's going to happen to me or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So you don't know what his character traits were if things really hit the fan. Now, speaking of someone that's like felt targeted now and again, to put it mildly, as an understatement, I know what it's like to feel pressure from all facets, you know. And some people, once they feel as though they're going to take pressure from all facets, they're not made for it, you know. It doesn't mean they're not tough or anything, they just don't want to come through, or they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel and they take another way, you know. But it's hard to know what was in one's mind, but, you know, could it be, this is the only question I want to ask, could it be like, this was always going to go this way? Maybe like he knew it would have all caught up with him, you know. But in saying that, no one knows like the bombardment he must have got, you know. Like, just reading bad thing after bad thing about yourself online, You know, it must, you know what I mean? No one knows what it feels like to be brought down from your perch, you know, like that. So high and mighty, because within the education circles, that is royalty. A Cambridge professor, right? There's nowhere you can go after that as well. You're like, you would feel like your career's ended. You've got no credibility. You know, where you live, your friends, your family, everything. It's all gone. Do you know what I mean? It's not like money or disgrace or drugs or anything like that. It's worse, yeah? So maybe he just felt he had nowhere to go, you know, and the media bombardment, hounding, you know, it just all became a bit too much, you know. But, yeah, I'd like to say, like, he didn't come off as though he was like a malicious person or anything like that. He just probably, things just escalated and snowballed, and he was never ever sort of questioned at the times that they should have done. As a university goes and checks that someone is who they say they are, and he was just allowed to sort of grow and grow and grow. So you could say the university are culpable in some way, shape or form, but it's just all round a sad situation, really, you know. And at this stage, I don't want to say too much more, really. Don't want to say too much more, because a lot more has to come out. And also, man, like what I've been looking, I haven't really looked for it online, but was this man good at his job? They're saying students are looking to put in claims against Cambridge, which you probably should if you didn't get as good as what you should have got, right? Or you definitely, right, in terms of grades. But was he actually a good professor at his actual subject? That's what I would like to know. Was he actually good at it? Because there's a lot of us that have lied on the CV and whatever else, but we actually turn out to be good at the job and whatever else, you know. Even though this is a little bit beyond that, you know, but do you get it? Like sometimes we've all said things that, you know, just to make sure and try and get in a position that we know we want to do and can do. So was he actually capable? Because he was at it for 2, 3, 4 years. So was he actually riding with the top brains and holding his own? And if so, I think that like sort of counts for something. If he's inspired people, and you know, there's people that can say, if it weren't for me, my degree wouldn't have been taken in that way, and I wouldn't have that perspective on what it is that I was studying, which was the social world within education, or whatever it is what he's a professor within, right? So yeah, it does count for something if he changed lives, and if like no matter what, like he did contribute to the lives of and the sort of education of people that are at the best place in England, Cambridge or Oxford, you know. So I'd like to know if he did, or if they were just like, he wasn't really fulfilling as a lecturer. And people would say that now because of what's happened, but it'd be nice to know like if he did actually contribute in a positive way. Anyway, I hope this has come out right, because it's a bit of a sensitive one in London at the moment. But I just had to sort of say what I saw, you know. And yeah, leave it there. All right. Take care. Anyway, take care. We'll move on to the next thing. So the next subject I wanted to cover was the government's proposal for the early release scheme of convicted criminals in prison, right? Just in short, really, you know, my only discount is this, like, I always feel sorry for someone that's like made a mistake, potentially black, or just inner city, urban, where I come from, right? And they've made a mistake. They're like, not wet behind the ears, but you know, they're 18 to 30 typically. They're not tough. They're not a tough guy. They're not a tough person. But then, yeah, all right, they've made a mistake, and they've landed themselves in an unfortunate situation, which is some jail time, right? Inside a conventional prison, right? I'm not gonna say, man. Now and again, depending on what it is that they've done, like, I feel sorry for these people, man. I feel sorry for them, and I feel like they do deserve another chance out in society, depending on what they've done, right? And I feel sorry for them all the time, like, and it can kind of hinder one when they really want to be tough and make the right decisions. I can understand, right? But in saying that, this is how I sit with the early release scheme. Yeah, I'd rather like have them inside for the period that they've been told by the judge in front of who it is that they've victimised that they'd be staying in prison for. I'd rather, if the judge has said you're staying in for this time in front of who's been perpetrated against, I'd rather they stay in for that length of time, because that's what the victim surely deserves, and that's what they thought the person was going down for, right? So, I'd want to protect the victim in terms of length of time served, because that's what they were sort of given as justice and would have cheered for or been happy with or not or whatever, right? But that's what they were given in the court of law for what was committed against them, so on and so forth, right? Now, these guys that are going to be released early, to me, like, a lot of them wouldn't have gone through the cycle of rehabilitation. And what I mean by that is, if someone gives you an amount of years to do, it's for a reason, right? It's for rehabilitation. Yeah. So someone coming out too early, yes, they may come off rehabilitated, but there's a method to it. There's a reason why they're given those amount of years, and so on and so forth. And also the victim that's been put down in a court of law. Those are the amount of years or time frame that you're meant to have stayed. So, you're sort of upsetting the victims, and also the person may not be rehabilitated, and you're letting them out onto the streets. Now, I was reading online, apparently 1 in 3 people that are released right now are going to reoffend. If you end up homeless, it's 70 to 80% chance that you're going to reoffend and be back in prison pretty sharpish, right? So the chances for them to reoffend are very, very, very high. And if you let them out extra early, that can only increase, surely, right? No matter what the crime is, yeah, because they're in a conveyor belt of, like, there's a good chance that they can go back here to prison, So what I would say is, I would rather quarantine the thing. And what I mean is like, I'd rather hear prison was overcrowded, or I'd rather hear a few, like, inhumane stories, or people being abused in prisons, or their human rights potentially being breached. I'd rather hear that, as opposed to this person's been released and they've gone on to sexually assault women on the underground. They've gone on to rape and kill women on the outside. I'd rather have them done that to a fellow inmate, or stayed within and quarantined within the prison system. I'd rather them stay there for a little bit longer, and maybe it comes out within there, and it may harm someone that I've spoken about at the beginning of this video. But weighing up things, I'd rather hear something like that, as opposed to someone being released and being allowed to quench their bloodthirst and go on a rampage out into the law-abiding public, and it's something you take on. It's a heavy responsibility to take on your shoulders, and they're both evil, if you know what I mean, but the lesser of, or what you feel's prioritised over another. And to me, the victims, by someone staying in there longer, are more satisfied, even though it's never enough. But then also as well, people that are going to be victimised, future people that are going to be reoffended against, they deserve a bit of protection. So for me, I'd be inclined to keep the prisons as overcrowded as possible, but not release people. That's what I would be inclined to do. Although with a heavy heart for people that, ain't really made for the prison system long term, or they've just made a mistake, they want to get out and live their lives. I do feel sorry for. And at the end of the day, I still need to think of them, because like you say, 1 in 3 reoffend. That means out of 1,600 men are still going to go out there and do well for themselves, So you still need to take them into consideration. However, like I would try to find a way of keeping these people on full term, as opposed to allowing them out into the public domain or into the pool of the public, and they take out their frustrations against the public, but it's so spread out, no one really feels it. But if you let out, 1,000 violent offenders all in one go, now they all live in different places around the UK, so you won't pick up on it. But long and short of it is, they are a highly probable group that they're going to reoffend, and it's going to be taken out against randomly against the UK public citizen. When if they were remained inside, there increases their chances of maybe getting in trouble and staying longer within prison, or just being more rehabilitated and maybe not taking the same risk, And also, man, you owe something to the victim sometimes and whatever. And if this is what's been said in court, this person stays for that time or whatever, and it's been agreed upon, the judges summed up, given this, given that, or whatever, then they need to stick to it, And also as well, the deterrent as well. Can you imagine the cycle, not now, but in years to come, people getting out off of things early, where they used to stay a lot longer, what it can create. It can create people just not even caring about serious crimes, because they think they may get out in half the time plus another year or two off, because the government hasn't got the space. So it's an emergency. You want to be respected as a government, as an authority, you need the spaces to be available. And I'd rather hear, to me, how I think, I'd rather hear that, where there was 1 or 2 people in a cell or whatever, there's 4, 5, 6 of them, and it's hell and it's squalid conditions. I'd rather sort of hear that from a governmental view than hear that someone got released and within 2 to 6 months they've gone on and murdered 2 women and raped women and sexual assaulted numerous women on the underground, etc., etc. Yeah, I'd rather hear they've done something horrible and nasty in prison than take it out into the open world, So, so early release, I would be against it, but it just depends on the actual prison quota, but also the type of crimes as well. But there's certain crimes where people don't want to see people coming out early, and it's understandable. And I would look to take the decision that, I need to respect the victims or what was said in court, but then also I need to be thinking about the people that are going to be offended against, because what they're saying is, if they let these people out early, and by statistical analysis, it means more people are going to be offended against. But for them not being able to stop prisoners, they're releasing people to go out there and hurt people, So it's a vicious cycle, but it's not right in a sense. It's not right, because you're trying to bring the statistics down, And yes, people will always be let out and reoffend. There's nothing you can do to stop it. It's not 100% right, but I believe like you're increasing the probabilities, and you're putting the public in danger. Anyway, that's my opinion on the early release scheme thus far. Anyway, let's move on. Right, so the next subject that I wanted to cover was migrant housing in towns and villages, and sort of idyllic locations and middle class to affluent locations up and down and around in the UK. Just give my thoughts on it. And where it sits with me is that, like, to me, like, these towns are, you know, they're with the culture of the UK. You know, sometimes, you know, if you've got like 1,000 people in your town or your village, all of a sudden you've got 400 or 500, maybe even 2,000 people that over a year or two that are like not from your town, and then now you're outnumbered, so you're a minority in your own town just literally overnight. You know, nightclubs, you've got women's coming out of them, and then they're being followed home by 3 and 4 guys and whatever, and there's a lot to worry about. It's not really fair, you know. To me, I wouldn't say this if I were the political godfather, but I would look to keep migrants within the city centres. I would put them on top of the city centres, because at the end of the day, the city centres are already not looking good, you could say. So you might as well see if they can make it look better, you know. But I'm not going to go and like ruin these towns, these beautiful looking towns that you might want to go away to on a weekend and whatever else, and just ruin the the social ecosystem just for like migrants. No, they've got everything, all the amenities. I'd put them on top of the cities, man. Do you know what I mean? Because I wouldn't want them to go and just like ruin the country from top to bottom. You might as well put them somewhere where it's already ruined. Do you know what I mean? It's like, for example, there's a borough in London called Camden, right? And, you know, Camden town is it's bustling. It's like loads of people, thousands of people coming through there left and right, yeah? And then you go up a hill towards out of the city, and if somebody just took the blindfold, you had a blindfold off, took the blinkers off or whatever, and you looked around, you could for a second think you're in an idyllic, quintessential English town, when really you're in the centre of London, literally within 10-minute drive, yeah? But yeah, in parts of Hampstead, for example, you could feel like you're in an English town, in an English village or whatever, yeah? You could feel like that for about a 5-minute drive, yeah? Right? But then just down the road, you've got like one of the busiest places in London, in Camden Town Centre, right? Now, to me, I would house migrants in Camden Town Centre, but nowhere near Hampstead. For me, I would try and preserve and conserve the area, keep it to its as original to what it looked like to what it can look like as possible. You know, treat it as though, I know you've got grade A listed buildings, a grade A listed area, so I wouldn't allow it to be changed easily. For love nor money, I wouldn't allow that, because I can see the future in that. You know, the preservation, you know, looking after somewhere that's already looked after, if you know what I mean, and not allowing it to be made to look like everywhere else, you know, and it can't facilitate what everywhere else is. It can't facilitate the extra people sometimes, yeah, even though it's got the space and so on and so forth, yeah, but it just hasn't got the amenities, and yeah, and the locals will be overrun and outnumbered. So certain businesses might do well, but over time, quality of life, etc., and just like safety, etc., etc., it's not going to be what it is. It's going to be presenting worries. Even if you don't see anything happen, it's just going to present lots of worries. So to me, like, why would you go and put people in a town that isn't broken, that may have its issues, but, you know, in some beautiful sort of market town, idyllic village town or whatever? Why would you stop these people there? Unless it's like a barracks, army barracks or something like that, yeah. Like, I wouldn't, even that, like, I would do my best, like, to keep them within the city centres. Even though the city centres are full, you could say. But that's the country's problem. But I wouldn't go and just like, because you must remember, once these people are there, they now have a base there. In years to come, they're going to possibly stay there. The town's going to be like, maybe become a town that serves another nation of people. Could be from anywhere, Africa, India, anywhere, right? But it's going to turn and change, so it's a quintessential English town, but all of a sudden it's serving another country from somewhere else or whatever. And also crime rate, etc., etc., a lot going on. So why go and like fiddle with like something that was beautiful from the beginning and can be beautiful in the end and remain so? I would do my best to keep those people within the city, man. Yeah. However, I feel as though like it's a little bit of a vote winner. I feel like a lot of people within the city will go for people that say, oh yeah, we're going to make everybody take these people and all the rest of it. You know, so like, you know, they'll probably get a few votes off of it. But me, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not in that situation, right? So me personally, just for the quality of the country, I'd rather keep it all quarantined within the city centres, you know, and then let the cities eventually find a way to sort things out. And then once the pressure's on in the cities, yeah, that's when it will filter down and they'll say, look, we can't take no more of this. But if you just allow them to plot and spread around evenly all around the country, they're never actually going to deal with the issue, which is to control the migration, register people, and have a system where you can literally draw someone to your centre and they can either stay or go, etc., etc., you know. So I feel like if you allow it to be spread around the country, it's never going to be solved. But if you just keep it in certain places, it will start to burst at the seams and they'll have to do something about it. But here, this method here, yeah, and if something's already, I don't want to swear or anything, but if an area is already damaged and whatever else, you might as well put them there, yeah, and see if they make it any better, yeah. But going and like ruining these nice towns and whatever else, you know, from my perspective, living in inner city London, I'm going to say yeah. But really, if I'm looking at it from further afield or from a 10,000 foot view, if you know what I mean, I wouldn't allow like any of this to happen outside of the city centres. I'd put it all on the city centres. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got the facilities, they've got the amenities, whether they like it or not, or much bigger in size and stature and everything, transport links, work, etc., etc., like just doctors, everything here, right? Then putting all that pressure on a small town, you know, and also like making like all these towns, these people will feel like they're prisoners in their own homes eventually, and all this sort of stuff. They've been overrun and overtaken. Better to take that in the city. But then once it gets a bit too much in the city, I think like the real problem, which is with controlling the migration and whatever else, will be eventually something will come to a head. Yeah, because it will become a boiling point and something would then definitely for certain be done. But if you allow them to just spread quietly around the country at different towns and centres, it's going to sweep under the radar. It's gonna like, and they're not gonna like do anything about it, you know. So I think like, yeah, that you should reject. They should try and reject this happening, and try and just like keep it to town centres and cities, and it doesn't seem like it can happen. It seems like it'd be too much for them, but that's what you want really, because that's when something would get done, in my view. Anyway, that's that. Let's move on. Yes, so in conclusion, Jason Arday situation, very, very sad. Condolences out to his family and his children. Yeah, obviously he must have done something great in his life. Do you know what I mean? He must like, I know they say like he lied to get into positions and all the rest of it, but a lot of people have lied to get into certain positions. He must have like imposed his personality on, or inspired some people along the way that have done great things that are going to go on to be mentioned. He must have touched quite a few lives. Come on, at some stage, man. So this must all come out. So he must have done a lot of positive, a lot more good than people are letting on at the moment, you know. And there's a lot of people that aren't qualified and maybe have forged certificates or whatever else throughout the sands of time and done well at the job, you know. So it's just the age that we live in. But in saying that, man, it was like quite a prestigious, high-ranking position that he had, you know. And you can't shy away from that, you know. He's at the top 5 university in the world, I think. You know, they're held to a terrifically high standard. You know, their professors are should be considered geniuses, right, in their own rank. So it's a lofty table in terms of intellectual rights and like behavior, you know. So those people, like, they are pretty mean, I would say. If someone doesn't meet the grade or someone's lied about it, maybe because of the work that they've had to put in, you know. It's not easy to get a degree, PhD, be recognised for it and then get in the position, you know, and you've done it all through hard work and, you know, you're told the truth, you know. But in saying that, man, we live in a world now where people are hounded into the ground, and not everyone is designed to absorb being hounded into the ground, you know. However, like, he seemed intelligent enough to know that one day the chickens may come home to roost, and I guess they did. And I'm pretty sure like he would have felt it mounting, but, you know, maybe sometimes we don't know what was in his mind, you know, whether it was that or whether, you know, he or maybe made that decision a long time. You just don't know, and I don't want to say, I don't want to be rude, you know. But, yeah, very, very sad. Obviously, there's nothing we can do about it because the media is the media, man. It's no one person. People just like vilify people and just like literally talk all types of, as much as what they can, and drive the person into the ground. So what I could say is as well is like, you know, people that get targeted, even like the Love Island Carolina Flack or whatever. Yeah, she was targeted in a similar way, or felt targeted in the way. You need good people. When something like this happens to somebody else in future, always remember, man, don't leave them. Stay with them. Don't even go to the shops, nothing. Stay with them. Give them a good support network. And just be like, I don't trust you being alone. If you know their character traits. Yeah, I don't trust you being alone. And just stick with them and give them a good support network. Through a little bit of a vulnerable time. Even though it might be difficult, but yeah, certain people, when you know they're going through a hard time, don't ever leave them. Don't leave them. Not for 1 second. Just tell them I don't trust leaving you alone. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to be with you 24/7. That's all you can do in a situation like that. Be with them 24/7. And just be talking positivity and just watching over them. Yeah, waking up before sleeping after them. Do you know what I mean? You just need to be watching them and just giving them pure support by you being there. Don't let them ever be alone. Is all I could say, man. That's all I could probably say. And then maybe they might have been there, you know. But that's easy to say. You don't know the situation, so we'll leave it there, right? But yeah, anyway, moving on, the early release scheme. As I said before, I would rather hear of human rights and maybe people having a hard time and certain abuses happening in prisons that are unsavoury and are disgusting and horrible. I'd rather hear that than somebody's been released early and reoffended into the British public, into the pool of British public, and it's not really picked up on because it's spread out thinly across the UK police network or whatever reporting. So we wouldn't pick up on it, but you know, just releasing people early to reoffend and take it out on the British public is what you're saying. And it's like, you know, if someone is the victim, you're the victim, you know, of someone that's reoffended through being let out early, or you know, if you know, someone's, you know, your relatives raped and tortured or whatever it is by someone that's let out early that should have been inside or been on a lot longer sentence. It's not very nice, and that's a random thing that can happen to absolutely anyone, right? So you need to think about protecting these people first, and also the victims. You know, someone's been told by a judge this is what someone's serving, they expect that, you know, and that's just being equitable, man. Do you know what I mean? You know, but obviously, once again, resting back, you do feel sorry for those people that have just done a few things that, you know, like they just still need to get their life back on track and they don't deserve to be locked up forever. And if they have atrocities behind closed doors in prisons carried out against them due to overcrowding, you do feel sorry for them. You know, you do feel sorry for them. But I'd rather hear a sad case of something happened to someone in prison than hear what happened the other week with this monster like running around raping women and whatever else in London. You know, like a Candyman. It's like a horror film. You know, it's horror film. You know what I mean? I'd rather hear that he wasn't let out and maybe he carried out those offences against people of his own kind inside or whomever. You know, and it may well be sad, but not as sad as that. And I would balance the fact that I'd rather hear they'd carried it out quarantined in a prison system than perpetrated against the public, because that's who you're protecting them from ultimately. Yeah, you're protecting people, the public, from people that may carry out crimes against them, you know. So that's who you need to protect first, you know. But I do understand we live in a world of like human rights. Human rights is very, very big and it's to the forefront, and you can't get away with giving people bad rights. But saying that, man, like, yeah, I know what I would choose, but whether you can get away with it or not is another thing. But really, they just need to possibly, you know, somehow find a way of building more ad hoc space, man. It's easy. We say it all the time, but you know, I don't think there's no financial benefit to it. They've got to make a financial benefit to it, or like I said before, man, just get the businesses involved somehow. But one thing's for certain, though, like I also take into consideration is that just from a perspective as a black person, obviously, like sometimes you do feel like the system not rigged against, but it's disproportionately sort of aimed at certain communities, you could say. But then it's just a demographic thing, and it is what it is, man. Do you know what I mean? It's another topic for another video anyway, man. I can't really go into it right now. Anyway, I hope this message reaches you well. Once again, deliver this message straight to your heart because it's from mine. Alright, bless, love, one.